taxed. That's an important truth to remember. But it's also important to remember, perhaps with some gratitude, that high earners do carry a big part of the tax burden in this country. Much is asked of them, and they do give. Why can't we just tax corporations more? The United States already has a corporate tax rate of nearly 40%, including federal, state, and local taxes. That's one of the highest corporate tax rates among developed countries. Companies can use tax breaks to lower their rates, but generally speaking, they still pay higher taxes here than in many other nations. When government raises taxes on a corporation, that company has to find a way to cover the additional cost of doing business. One way is to raise the price of its product or service, passing the cost along to the consumer, which means that you and I are the ones who really end up paying the tax. Corporations might also decide to relocate to states or countries with lower taxes. In this age of global markets and instant communication, many companies can operate from wherever it makes good economic sense to be. If you were the head of a corporation, would you want to be in a place that hit your company with high taxes if you could help it? Probably not. In the view of many conservatives, and even some liberals, the best strategy is to lower corporate tax rates. That attracts corporations looking for good business climates. The more companies a state or country can attract, the more jobs are available to people, and the more taxes government can collect. It's important to recognize the source of the revenues that keep government running. It's the private sector, companies large and small. When government gets too greedy for those revenues, it can drive companies away and lose its tax base. An Aesop fable we all learned as children applies here. A man and his wife had the good fortune to possess a goose that laid a golden egg every day. As lucky as they were, they wanted even more. They imagined the goose must be made of gold inside, and they decided to kill the goose to get it. But when the man sliced into the bird, he discovered that it was just like any other. Their goose was dead, and they got no more gold. Should taxes be used to redistribute wealth? The United States has a progressive income tax system. That means people who earn more money pay a greater percentage of their income in taxes to fund government programs, including programs for the needy. It's a redistribution of wealth from those with more to those with less. As long as the system helps those truly in need within reasonable limits, most Americans are fine with it. But if redistributing wealth really means, I'm taking money from you because it's not fair that you have more than I do, then many people have a big problem with it. Liberals often accuse wealthy Americans of not paying their fair share and call for taxing them more. Here are a few facts and questions to think about when you hear such talk. The top federal tax rate on people who earn a lot of money is about 40%. Like all taxpayers, they can use tax breaks to lower their federal taxes, but they still face other taxes, such as state and local taxes, taxes on investments, and self-employment taxes. How much more of their income is it fair to take? 60%? 80%? What is a fair amount to take from your income? Many government programs are wasteful, ineffective, and out of control when it comes to spending. Is it fair for the government to take more money from anyone to pay for such programs? The top 1% of U.S. taxpayers, the wealthiest, pay about a third of all federal income taxes collected by the government. That means a very small portion of Americans pay a large part of the nation's federal tax bill. So is it fair to suggest that people who make a lot of money are not paying their fair share? Or is that class warfare? Government debt. Think what you do when you run in debt. You give to another power over your liberty. If you cannot pay at the time, you will be ashamed to see your creditor. You will be in fear when you speak to him. You will make poor, pitiful, sneaking excuses, and by degrees come to lose your veracity, and sink into base, downright lying. For the second vice is lying, the first is running in debt, as Poor Richard says. And again, to the same purpose, lying rides upon debt's back. Whereas a freeborn Englishman ought not to be ashamed nor afraid to see or speak to any man living. But poverty often deprives a man of all spirit and virtue. It is hard for an empty bag to stand upright. Benjamin Franklin, The Way to Wealth, 1758. Benjamin Franklin would be horrified at the situation the United States has let itself get into. For years, the federal government has been spending more money than it has. It has piled up an enormous mountain of debt, $18 trillion and rising as of 2015. That's roughly $60,000 of debt for each man, woman, and child in this country. That doesn't even include debts that state and local governments have racked up. If you want to see how fast the debt is mounting, go to the U.S. National Debt Clock website, www.usdebtclock.org, and take a look. You won't like what you see. Here is the bottom line. The United States is on the road to serious financial problems, perhaps even financial catastrophe. If you are a young American, you should be particularly alarmed. Unless something is done soon, a debt this size may crush your chances for a prosperous future. What's causing so much national debt? One word: spending. Uncle Sam is like a man with a credit card on a shopping spree. He keeps charging more and more things, but he doesn't have the money to pay for them. Almost every year during the last few decades, the federal government has spent more money than it gets in taxes. The difference between its expenditures and its tax revenues each year is called the budget deficit. Each year, the government has to borrow money to make up for the deficit and cover all its bills. The amount the government borrows varies from year to year, depending on the deficit. In 2014, it borrowed 14 cents out of every dollar spent. The government borrows money from all sorts of places: foreign countries like China and Japan, banks, mutual fund investors, and state and local governments. It sells bonds to these lenders and promises to pay them back with interest. But the government doesn't have enough money in any one year to pay back what it owes and to keep spending so much. So it keeps borrowing more and more. That means its debt, the total of all the money it owes, keeps going up. What is the government spending so much money on? Most of the spending goes toward massive programs that pay out benefits to millions of people. In 2014, about half the federal budget went to Social Security, retirement income for the elderly, Medicare, health care insurance for the elderly, Medicaid, health care insurance for the poor, Obamacare, and other health insurance spending. These programs have been growing rapidly and are expected to keep growing as the country's population ages. Interest on the debt, the money Uncle Sam pays to lenders every year as the price of borrowing money from them, is another part of the budget that keeps growing. The more we borrow, the more interest we have to pay off. Before too long, if we don't change course, we will be spending $1 trillion a year just to pay interest on the debt. What will happen if the debt keeps growing? Think about what would happen if you kept putting more and more charges onto a credit card. The bigger your debt, the larger your monthly payments to the credit card company. You could spend years struggling to pay off the debt instead of buying things you really needed, such as a house or a car. If you couldn't make your monthly credit card payments, you might even go into bankruptcy. The circumstances are not identical with governments, but the laws of finance are the same. Debts must be paid, or bad things happen. As the United States keeps borrowing money, its interest payments on the debt grow. In fact, interest payments could eventually turn into the largest single expense the government has. We could end up spending more money paying back our creditors than we'll spend on vital government jobs, such as maintaining an army to defend ourselves. Meanwhile, our huge payments to countries that have loaned us money, like China, will go to building their armies and making their nations richer. As the nation's debt gets out of control, all sorts of bad things can happen. The government may eventually hike taxes to help pay for all its borrowing and spending. Big tax increases would fall mainly on the middle class, since it is the largest source of taxable income. That would leave people with less money to buy things and start businesses. A huge debt could force the government to make deep cuts to many programs. It could also lead to inflation and higher interest rates. All of these things would slow economic growth and weaken job markets, perhaps for a long time. The debt could put the American dream at risk for rising generations. In a worst-case scenario, a huge debt could cause the government to start having problems paying all its bills. That could drive the economy into a downward spiral. If you want to see what happens when a country spins itself into a crisis, read about what happened to Greece in 2010. Government debt reached the breaking point, and the economy went into freefall. Businesses went under. Thousands lost their jobs. The government announced it would have to cut services and raise taxes. People rioted in the streets. Other European nations had to step in and bail Greece out. Or, closer to home, read about what happened to Detroit, Michigan in 2013. Years of local government overspending, borrowing, and mismanagement played a major role in driving a once glittering city into financial ruin and bankruptcy. That was the whole culture. How do we get what we want and not pay for it until tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow? A former Detroit budget staffer said. Is debt going to throw the United States into financial ruin tomorrow? No. But 20 or 30 years down the road, it could cause serious economic problems. That's why young people, students or recent graduates, for example, should be especially alarmed over government debt. If you are young, the burden is going to fall on you. You'll have to pay, one way or another, for all the spending and borrowing that is going on today. Why does the government keep spending so much money? There are several reasons. One is a growing country. More people means more for the government to do. Another reason is greater affluence. Wealthy populations tend to expect more government services. Another is changing attitudes. Over time, Americans have voted for bigger and bigger government. Some programs, entitlements such as Social Security and Medicare, are by law on autopilot to cost more with time. As the population grows and ages, these programs pay out more benefits every year. Much of the spending is the result of government's natural tendency to expand. Here is the truth about modern American democracy that conservatives have learned over the years. Once a government program gets going, it is extremely difficult to end it. In fact, the opposite almost always happens. Government programs tend to keep growing, taking on lives of their own, and costing more every year. Each program gains a constituency of voters who benefit from it and howl when anyone suggests cutting back. They pressure Congress to get more funding, not less. The debt problem grows every year, but a crisis is still years away. It's much easier for lawmakers to put off fixing things than to face the pain of cutting back. Like the man addicted to his credit card, the government keeps overspending, even though it realizes it's only making things worse. Here's another truth that applies to modern American government. It's easy to spend other people's money. Many lawmakers go to Washington because they want to use government to fix problems and to improve the country. It doesn't take long for them to start thinking, just a few $1 million here or a few $1 billion over there would help things. That money doesn't come out of their own pockets, of course. That makes it so much easier to vote for big government programs. So the spending and borrowing goes on. Margaret Thatcher, a great British prime minister in the latter part of the 20th century, used to say that the problem with socialism is you eventually run out of other people's money. The same could be said of a government with debt spiraling out of control. The day will come when there is no more money to borrow. How do we bring our debt problem under control? Conservatives believe that the best way out of debt is to rein in government spending, make serious reforms to government programs, and use the power of free enterprise to grow the nation's economy. When the economy grows, people and businesses make more money, which means the government collects more tax revenue. It can use that revenue to pay off debt. Meanwhile, the federal government will have to break its bad habit of spending so much. In particular, it will have to reform popular entitlement programs that are bankrupting the country, including Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Restraining the growth of government spending is a hard choice for politicians to make. But not long ago, Americans discovered that it is in fact possible to trim the government's budget. In 2013, Congress cut $85 billion in spending. It was a tiny portion of the federal budget, but liberals still warned of dire consequences. Over 1 million lost jobs, disruptions in air travel, increased risks of wildfires, closed housing projects, and hundreds of thousands of women and children thrown out of aid programs, to name a few predictions. None of the doomsday warnings came true. The government managed to tighten its belt, and the country went on. In fact, the budget cuts led to only one government job being lost. As the debt increases, many liberals will argue that raising tax rates is the key to paying it off. But thinking that we can tax our way out of debt is a mistake. Higher taxes will place a heavier burden on future generations. They could siphon money away from the private sector and stymie the economy. If you had a credit card problem and sat down with a credit counselor, she would not say, "Well, you just need to go out and get more money so you can keep spending." The first thing she would say is, "Stop spending so much." Common sense is a good guide here. If we can use the powerful American economy to bring more revenue to the government and bring the government spending down to sensible levels, we can stabilize the nation's finances. That will make the future for young Americans much brighter. Part 3. Individual Liberty. Here are some of the most important words ever written in America. Amendment 1. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Amendment 2. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Amendment 4. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. Recognize them? They're part of the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. The founders wrote them to ensure that government doesn't trample individuals' rights and liberties, such as freedom of speech and freedom of religion. We often take such liberty for granted. It's easy to think, well, of course I'm free to say what I think and to worship however I want. That's a mistake, because the liberties we Americans enjoy are fragile blessings. Much of the world does not have such freedom. It always needs protecting. Always. Eternal vigilance is the price of liberty, an old saying goes. It's absolutely true. James Madison and the other authors of the Bill of Rights knew that government must protect individuals' liberties, but they also understood that the natural tendency of government to accumulate power can erode individual liberty. I believe that there are more instances of the abridgment of the freedom of the people by gradual and silent encroachments of those in power than by violent and sudden usurpations, Madison warned. In other words, beware of government slowly chipping away at your liberty. The bigger government gets, as it has in the last several decades, the greater the temptation for government officials to restrict freedom. It's very important to remember that liberty walks hand in hand with responsibility. American freedom rests on the idea that most people are capable of being responsible for their own affairs, and should be. Every time we don't take responsibility for our own affairs, and instead place that responsibility in government's hands, we give up some of our freedom. This chapter examines some issues that involve your liberties as an American citizen. As you think about them, you might want to ask yourself, what sort of vigilance does liberty need today? And what sort of responsibilities come with my liberty? Is the left tolerant of free speech? Liberals like to think of themselves as tolerant, but there are a lot of people on the left who seem to think it's okay to silence those who don't agree with them. They're especially keen on excluding conservative viewpoints. Here are a few examples. During President Barack Obama's administration, officials at the Internal Revenue Service tried to muzzle dozens of groups supporting conservative causes by denying or slowing down their requests for tax-exempt status. The effort was led by a supporter of President Obama who wrote that conservatives pose a bigger threat than alien terrorists. Dismayed by surveys showing that the majority of TV meteorologists don't buy the idea of human-caused global warming, climate change activists have launched a campaign to force them to change their views or get them off the air. These climate denier meteorologists are betraying the public's trust and distorting America's airwaves, one liberal publication reported. In 2012, liberal government officials in Chicago, Boston, and other cities threatened to keep fast food chain Chick-fil-A out of their communities after company CEO Dan Cathy stated his belief that marriage should be between a man and a woman. Chick-fil-A values are not Chicago values, the mayor of Chicago explained. At many universities, liberal students and professors try their best to keep people they disagree with from speaking on campus. One student at Swarthmore College put it this way after a visit by Princeton professor Robert George. "I don't think we should be tolerating George's conservative views because that dominant culture embeds these deep inequalities in our society." In 2014, Brandeis University in Massachusetts canceled an invitation to Ayaan Hirsi Ali to receive an honorary degree. Hirsi Ali is a Somali-born feminist known as a crusader for women's rights, especially in Muslim societies. Brandeis withdrew its invitation because she had made statements deemed critical of Islam. In 2014, Harvard's student newspaper, The Crimson, carried a column that proposed replacing academic freedom with a more rigorous standard, one of academic justice. When an academic community observes research promoting or justifying oppression, it should ensure that this research does not continue. Of course, liberals like that student columnist would hold the power to enforce academic justice by deciding what sort of research should or should not continue. To be fair, some liberals are unhappy with efforts to shut down debate. Yet despite claims of being open-minded, far too many on the left have become intolerant of opposing viewpoints. How does the Affordable Care Act affect individual liberty? The Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, is a massive law passed by Democrats in Congress and signed by President Obama in 2010 with the aim of lowering health care costs and getting more people covered by health insurance. Conservatives don't like the law for several reasons. One main objection is that it infringes on people's liberty. Under Obamacare, the government has assumed control over a big chunk of the nation's healthcare system. It sets requirements about buying health insurance, and it taxes people if they don't buy insurance to the government's liking. It dictates rules about the policies that insurance companies offer and the plans that businesses offer their employees. For many conservatives, the issue boils down to this question: how much power should the government have over our health care, one of the most personal aspects of our lives? Because one thing is for certain: the more control the government has, the less freedom we have. When government calls the shots about health care, it controls decisions about our bodies. That's a tremendous amount of power for government to have, especially since bureaucracies tend to treat people as numbers rather than individuals. There are other reasons conservatives object to Obamacare, including the dishonest way that President Obama and other liberals sold it to the American people. They said that if people liked their doctor and health care plan, they'd be able to keep them. many Americans have discovered that isn't true. One of the architects of Obamacare was caught on video boasting that the public had been misled about the law and that the stupidity of the American voter was really critical for the thing to pass. Obamacare has spawned thousands of pages of regulations, and more are being written. The system is so complex, hardly anyone really understands it. As this book was being written, the U.S. Supreme Court was scheduled to rule on a legal challenge that could end up crippling the entire law. No one knows how much Obamacare will end up costing taxpayers, but if history is any guide, you can bet it will be much more than projected. In short, it shows all the signs of a bloated, bureaucracy-ridden, budget-busting government program that delivers mediocre results at best. Many liberals view Obamacare as a step toward what they really want, a socialized healthcare system completely run by the government. That's something conservatives adamantly oppose. People in countries with government-run healthcare often face a tangled bureaucracy, limited choices, and long waits for surgery and other needed procedures. Supporters of Obamacare claim the law does nothing to infringe on anyone's freedom. So here are a couple of additional questions to think about. Are thousands and thousands of pages of federal healthcare regulations likely to increase or decrease liberty? And is expanding federal bureaucracy even more really going to do much for your health? Is the right to have a gun an outdated notion we need to scrap? No. The founders knew what they were doing when they wrote the Second Amendment, which ensures the right of the people to keep and bear arms. That right is important to this day. When they wrote the Constitution and Bill of Rights, the founders had just finished winning their liberty. They knew from experience that sometimes people have to fight for their rights, their safety, and their lives. But the world is a different place now, someone might say. We're not in a fight with a king for our freedom. Wouldn't it be better to pass a law making it illegal to own guns? That would make the country a much safer place. The problem with laws that prohibit people from owning firearms is that law-abiding people are the only ones who will consistently obey them. Criminals won't. Breaking laws, after all, is what criminals do. That means criminals would have guns, and honest citizens wouldn't. If you were a criminal, would you be more inclined to break into a home if you knew the people living there had no way to defend themselves? Or if you knew they might have a gun to stop you? Well, let's try some laws that make it hard for people to have guns and see how they work, someone might reply. In fact, those kinds of gun control laws have been tried in several parts of the country. There's no evidence that they reduce crime. Some places with strict gun control laws have higher violent crime rates than areas with fewer gun restrictions. Here's the critical point that many on the left fail to grasp. Guns themselves are neither good nor bad. People use them for good or bad purposes. Laws keeping guns out of good people's hands are not going to stop bad people from getting and using guns. They only leave the good people more vulnerable. The problem is not guns themselves. The problem is criminal and antisocial behavior. That's why conservatives favor tough laws that throw the book at people who use guns in crimes. Criminals should know that when they reach for a gun, they're reaching for a long time in prison. None of this is to say that people should be able to have any kind of gun or weapon anytime they want. Second Amendment rights, like others, are not unlimited. For example, there is no constitutional right to take a gun into a school or to own a nuclear warhead. Obviously, reasonable laws are in order. For example, many Americans believe it makes sense to require background checks before people buy guns to keep criminals and people who are mentally ill from purchasing them. This is an example of individual liberty coming with great individual responsibility. The freedom to own guns works only when people take care in how they use them. Conservatives trust that most people will use guns in a responsible manner, which in fact they do. Let's get rid of guns isn't a realistic or constitutional solution. Better to focus efforts on stopping and punishing people who use guns to do bad things. Is freedom of religion alive and well in the United States? Overall, the United States does a good job of getting this liberty right. Americans are among the most tolerant and respectful people in the world when it comes to matters of religion. We're free to worship God, or to not worship, according to our different faiths, just as the founders envisioned. Still, freedom of religion can't be taken for granted. Throughout history, it's been one of the hardest liberties for people to keep. One potential threat comes from religion itself, in the form of religious extremism, the kind of religion that forces itself on people and says, worship and live this way or else. Radical Islam is such a threat. For example, members of the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, ISIS, will spill as much blood as necessary to spread their caliphate, a Muslim state ruled by the successor of Muhammad. ISIS members believe that infidels deserve beheading and blowing up. Our message to the entire world is that we are the soldiers of the caliphate state and we are coming, they've announced. If we want to make sure that kind of extremism stays outside our borders, the United States has to keep its defenses up and its tradition of religious liberty strong. It also has to safeguard another liberty, free speech and the criticism of extreme religious views. People must feel free to speak up against dangerous religious thought. A second potential threat against liberty is very different. It does not occur on a regular basis in the United States, but we have to be vigilant about it. It's the threat of government exerting its power and in the process, trampling on religious liberty. In 2014, for example, the city of Houston, Texas, issued subpoenas demanding that pastors of 5 churches turn over any sermons they had given about homosexuality. The demand was a blatant attempt to intimidate religious groups opposed to a city law allowing men dressed as women to use ladies' restrooms, and vice versa. If the 5 pastors used pulpits for politics, their sermons are fair game, the mayor of Houston tweeted. The city later backed down and withdrew the subpoenas after a public outcry. Is that the kind of country you want to live in? One where government officials bully ministers into handing over sermons and teachings on sexuality and gender identity because they don't like their religious beliefs? Even in America, freedom of religion always needs safeguarding. It's no accident it comes first on the list in the Bill of Rights. Are U.S. spy agencies a threat to our own liberty? Technology advances have changed the nature of the spy business in recent years, and with those changes have come new concerns about individual liberties. The National Security Agency, NSA, has been a focus of controversy. It's a super-secret intelligence agency that monitors and collects data on billions of communications around the globe every day: cell phone calls, emails, Facebook chats, internet traffic. Since the NSA works behind closed doors, few people know exactly what kind of information it collects or how it operates. Why collect such a massive amount of data? The NSA's job is to track down terrorists and others who want to do the United States harm. Intelligence officials are basically looking for needles in a giant haystack. They use computer programs to data mine those billions of communications, searching for clues about where the bad guys are and what they're up to. Conservatives are of 2 different minds about this issue. Those sympathetic to a libertarian position, as well as those upset by government overstepping its bounds so often in recent years, are likely to say, "Hold on. Giving government power to scoop up so much information in secret is asking for trouble. How do we know what they're going to do with it?" They have a good point. The more power government assumes, the greater the chances that someone may abuse that power, for example, by using information against political opponents. When government operates in secrecy, it's hard, if not impossible, to know when it's misusing power until it's too late. The NSA reportedly collects data on practically all phone calls made in the United States, though not what's said in those conversations. That kind of broad surveillance, critics say, threatens people's privacy and violates the Fourth Amendment, which is supposed to protect citizens from unreasonable searches. Conservatives who focus on national defense view it a bit differently. They say, look, we really don't like it either, but we're in a war with terrorists. When you're in a war, government has to do what's necessary to keep us safe, and sometimes government has to do it in secret. That's a good point, too. Supporters of the NSA's programs remind us that the first duty of government is to protect citizens, and that we need to use every tool at our disposal to track down terrorists. The NSA targets foreign suspects, not U.S. citizens. It operates under rules designed to safeguard Americans' privacy and collects information with warrants issued by a special court. People have mixed feelings about this issue. We want our privacy, but we also want to be safe. For many, it comes down to this question: how much do we trust our own government? Unfortunately, confidence in government is pretty low these days. Nevertheless, given the threats toward our national security and how hard it is to stop terrorists, on balance, the NSA program makes sense. The rule of law. One of the worst abuses of power in recent American history targeted conservatives. Beginning in 2010, the Internal Revenue Service, the agency in charge of enforcing tax law, zeroed in on groups advocating for conservative issues. Tea Party groups and other conservative organizations were applying for tax-exempt status. The IRS barraged them with demands for information, including names of donors, copies of Facebook posts, and what books members were reading. At least one pro-life group was instructed to provide details about prayer meetings. The demands for information dragged on. Meanwhile, very few liberal groups were scrutinized. In 2013, when the IRS's activities became public, a political firestorm erupted. Republicans in Congress demanded that the agency explain its actions, but officials stonewalled. After months of promising to turn over email records, the IRS informed Congress that they had been destroyed. A Treasury Department investigation later found thousands of the missing records. Emails gathered from other sources showed that one top IRS official had referred to conservatives as blank holes and crazies. As of this writing, an investigation into the scandal was still ongoing. President Barack Obama declared that there was not even a smidgen of corruption in the IRS's actions. In fact, there is plenty of evidence of corruption. The IRS, one of the most powerful and intimidating government agencies, conducted a bureaucratic assault on conservatives because officials did not like their political views. Such action is a betrayal of democracy, and it strikes at one of this country's bedrock principles, the rule of law. What does the rule of law mean? The rule of law is a principle that law should govern a nation, not the wishes of kings, dictators, or government officials. Its opposite is the rule of men. That's when rulers set themselves above the law and issue commands as they see fit, often in their own interests, not in the interests of the people. When well-written laws are the authority of the land, people can expect their government to operate in fair, predictable ways. On the other hand, when officials have the power to make up and change rules as they go along, anything can happen. Freedom is usually the first casualty. Individual liberty can't survive for long when government has unrestrained power to say, do this and don't do that. Likewise, liberty suffers when people lose respect for the law. A community or country where people don't obey the law is a place where no one is free to feel safe, own property, or live without their rights being violated. Abraham Lincoln knew that reverence for the law is crucial in a free nation. Let every American, every lover of liberty, every well-wisher to his posterity swear by the blood of the Revolution never to violate in the least particular the laws of the country, and never to tolerate their violation by others, he wrote. Let every man remember that to violate the law is to trample on the blood of his father and to tear the character of his own and his children's liberty. The rule of law is a big reason that millions of people around the world want to live in or do business in the United States. They believe they can count on the United States being a place where most people obey the law, where property rights are respected, and where authorities help protect against lawbreakers. When government abuses its power, as it did in the IRS scandal, it severely damages the rule of law. It breeds cynicism and destroys confidence in government. It leaves people asking themselves, if government breaks the rules, why shouldn't I? Do big government bureaucracies weaken the rule of law? They certainly can. Government bureaucracies often give us rule by decree, not rule of law. Here's how it works. We learned in school that the Constitution divides the federal government into three main branches. The legislative branch writes the law, the executive branch enforces the law, and the judicial branch interprets the law. That is how our federal government is supposed to work. The truth is that much of government no longer follows that plan. Instead, Congress often passes vague laws and leaves it to bureaucracies such as the Environmental Protection Agency and the Department of Health and Human Services to come up with the specifics. Unelected government officials finish writing the laws through regulations. Not only do they write the regulations, but the same bureaucracies enforce their regulations, impose fines, and act as judges when disputes over the regulations come up. For example, Congress may pass a law saying that companies can't engage in unfair trade practices, but it leaves it up to the Federal Trade Commission to define unfair, decide if businesses are being unfair, and issue fines as it sees fit. Likewise, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service can tell landowners what they can and can't do with their land if it decides it might affect a species the agency has defined as threatened or endangered. Government agencies that become lawgiver, police officer, judge, and jury are not what the founders had in mind when they designed a government with a separation of powers. As James Madison wrote, "The accumulation of all powers, legislative, executive, and judiciary, in the same hands may justly be pronounced the very definition of tyranny." Federal regulators hold enormous power over the decisions people and businesses make. They can shut down businesses, ban ingredients from food, and tell people what kind of health insurance they can buy. Many bureaucrats lean to the left politically. They like the idea of using government to fashion society to their way of thinking, and they write regulations to exert more control. Some of them think that, just because they live in Washington, D.C., they know better than the rest of the country. They don't. Obviously, some regulations are necessary, but when unelected officials get to dictate how we should live based on how they think the world should be, we no longer live under the rule of law. We live by government decree. Why do conservatives hold police officers in high regard? Conservatives view police officers as upholders of the rule of law. They are the thin blue line that stands between the public and criminals, between the lawful and the unlawful. Government's first responsibility is to provide for the security of citizens. Without law and order, society falls into chaos. But law and order can't exist without someone to enforce the law. That's where the police come in. Respect for law enforcement authority is necessary in any civilized society. When that respect erodes, lawlessness is sure to follow. Sometimes the police make mistakes, including tragic mistakes like shooting innocent people. And not all police officers are good. Like any group of human beings, there are some who are irresponsible and even corrupt. When police officers do wrong, they need to be called out and, if appropriate, prosecuted. It's also true that America's history includes times when police forces in some communities have mistreated and even brutalized minorities. Honesty requires us all to recognize that. That history has left a strained relationship between citizens and the police in some places. But it's important to recognize that in this country today, you can almost always count on police officers to stand for right against wrong. They stand for our safety, our rights, and our freedom. Most of them are people motivated by a genuine desire to serve and protect. Many put their lives on the line every day doing just that. It's also important to understand that our poorest neighborhoods, including ones in our inner cities, need the police most of all. The vast majority of those neighborhoods' residents are decent, law-abiding citizens. Many are scared to death of the drug dealers and other criminals on their streets. They want more, not less police protection. Here's something to think about. Imagine for a minute that you are in real trouble. Someone bad is threatening your life or destroying your property. Who do you want there right beside you, right away to save you from harm? If you're like most Americans, you want a cop. We call on the police when we're in desperate trouble because they're the good guys, the ones who stand for the rule of law. What is judicial activism? One of this book's co-authors once heard a student ask a New Hampshire judge, "Do judges make law?" The judge admitted, "Yep, I've made some myself." That's not the way it's supposed to be. Elected legislators, not judges, are supposed to write laws. But the truth is that courts make law all the time. It's called judicial activism, and it happens when judges let their personal or political views guide their decisions rather than going by what the law says. When issuing an opinion, the judge actively reshapes the law to suit his or her idea of what it should say. Sometimes judicial activism is called legislating from the bench. The big problem with judicial activism is that it undermines the rule of law. In place of representative democracy, judges impose their own beliefs on people. We like to think of judges as unbiased individuals who apply strict logic to the questions before them. But they are human beings like the rest of us, and often their own values and political opinions get mixed into their rulings. Presidents know this. That's why they're likely to appoint federal judges who share their own philosophical and political beliefs. Many liberal judges believe in the concept of a living constitution. They think that as the world changes, courts should reinterpret the Constitution to give it new meanings with new principles to fit the times. The concept of a living constitution gives activist judges a freer hand to interpret laws according to how they see things and to change laws they don't like. Roe v. Wade, a 1973 United States Supreme Court case, is a famous example of judicial activism. In that case, the court ruled that women have a fundamental right to abortion under the Constitution. Yet there is nothing at all in the Constitution about a right to abortion. The Supreme Court simply invented it. As Justice Byron White wrote in a dissenting opinion, "I find nothing in the language or history of the Constitution to support the court's judgment. The court simply fashions and announces a new constitutional right for pregnant mothers." Justice White called the Supreme Court's action an exercise of raw judicial power. What is judicial restraint? Conservatives believe that judges should use judicial restraint in interpreting law. That is, they should restrain themselves from using their rulings to rewrite laws. Instead, they should base their decisions on what the Constitution and the laws say, not what judges think they should say. If laws are bad, or if they need changing in some way, the best place to fix them is in elected legislatures. If the Constitution itself needs changing, it provides a way to make amendments, spelled out in Article 5. President Ronald Reagan summed it up this way: "The role assigned to judges in our system was to interpret the Constitution and lesser laws, not to make them. It was to protect the integrity of the Constitution, not to add to it or subtract from it, certainly not to rewrite it. For as the framers knew, unless judges are bound by the text of the Constitution, we will, in fact, no longer have a government of laws, but of men and women who are judges. And if that happens, the words of the documents that we think govern us will be just masks for the personal and capricious rule of a small elite." Immigration. The United States immigration system is broken in just about every way. Broken is really too mild a description. Wrecked is a better word. It's a system in ruins, and the federal government has been unwilling to do anything about it. No one knows how many illegal immigrants are flooding across the southern border. Hundreds of thousands try each year. Most are from Mexico, but many come from El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and other Latin American countries. The Mexican border has become a lawless place. Illegal immigrants often pay coyotes, human smugglers, thousands of dollars to guide them across deserts and streams. Along the way, Mexican drug cartels often demand extortion money on threat of death. They kidnap thousands headed for the United States and hold them for ransom. Many of the immigrants are children, sometimes traveling with parents, sometimes alone. Beatings, robberies, and rapes are part of the journey. People sometimes go days without food or water. Yet they risk it all because they've heard they can get into the United States. When they reach the border, illegal immigrants try to slip past the Border Patrol. In some places, they come in such huge numbers that overwhelmed agents can't stop them. Once on U.S. soil, their chances of staying are good. If detained by authorities, they're often given a date to appear before an immigration judge and then released. Everyone knows they aren't likely to show up for the hearing. Millions more who are here illegally come another way. They enter the country legally with a valid visa, but then stay when their visa expires. They simply never go home. It's impossible to tell exactly how many illegal immigrants are in this country. Some estimates put the number at 12 million and growing. Since they broke the law entering the country, they live on the fringes of society. Most work in low-skilled jobs, often using fake IDs and forged documents. Meanwhile, millions around the world who want to come here legally can't because of official immigration limits. Because they want to play by the rules, they might wait years for permission to come to America, if permission ever comes at all. It's a dysfunctional and dangerous state of affairs, and this is a country that likes to think of itself as immigrant-friendly. Why do conservatives want to keep immigrants out? They don't. Most conservatives are strong supporters of legal immigration. They believe it's good for this country and the people coming here. Immigration has always been an essential part of the American tradition. We are, after all, a nation built by immigrants and their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. Immigrants make this a culturally rich land. They come with a strong work ethic and a determination to pursue the American dream. The United States has always played a special role in the world as a beacon of freedom. It's no accident that the Statue of Liberty, probably America's most famous monument, is a symbol of not only freedom, but welcoming newcomers. Or that the words of the poet Emma Lazarus, inscribed on the statue's base, are some of our most beloved. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. President Ronald Reagan summed up many conservatives' feelings this way: I have always believed that this anointed land was set apart in an uncommon way, that a divine plan placed this great continent here between the oceans to be found by people from every corner of the earth who had a special love of faith and freedom. On the other hand, conservatives take a strong stand against illegal immigration. There's a big difference between people going about something lawfully and going about it unlawfully. People who want to immigrate here legally might stand in line for years to get a visa or a green card. They fill out all the paperwork and often hire attorneys to help them navigate the system. That system is too complex and slow. It badly needs streamlining and reform. Nevertheless, this group goes about entering the country according to the rules. Those who finally become citizens stand before a judge one day, raise their right hands, and take the oath of allegiance. For most, it's one of the proudest days of their lives. At the same time, millions are sneaking in through the back door. They're looking for better lives, and that's understandable. But they start off by breaking the law and continue to break the law by staying illegally. This isn't a matter of being anti-anybody or wanting to keep foreigners out. It's a matter of having sensible laws, enforcing them, and following them. What's wrong with having an open border? What's wrong with open borders? Liberals sometimes say. God has no borders, neither should we. People should be free to go wherever they want. A world without borders is a nice utopian dream, but it's not realistic. In fact, it would be dangerous. Think about what would happen if you opened wide the door of your house or apartment and posted a sign that said, "Strangers welcome, come on in." Pretty soon, you'd have people tromping in, making themselves at home, coming and going at will. You wouldn't feel safe, and for good reason. Eventually, something bad would happen. The same is true for a country. Leave the door wide open, and bad things will happen. A porous border is a nightmare for law enforcement agencies. It means dealing with people who have false or no documentation. It risks letting in people who can make us unsafe. Tens of thousands of illegal immigrants in this country now are convicted criminals. People pouring over the border unchecked is a national security threat. We know that Islamic terrorists would like nothing better than to come into this country and kill as many Americans as they can. They've told us so, and there have been reports of Islamic terrorist cells operating along the southern border. An open border increases the odds of diseases spreading from other places and quickly getting out of control. Masses of people surging in puts a strain on public finances. For example, children of illegal immigrants born here are automatically U.S. citizens and are eligible for a wide range of welfare benefits. Yes, someone might say, but why worry about the southern border when we have miles of unprotected borders elsewhere? There are thousands of isolated places where someone could walk across the border from Canada or pull a boat into a coastal inlet. That's true, but the fact is that we don't have a problem of mass illegal immigration on those borders. We need to address the problem where it exists. It's important to remember that Americans do, in fact, have the right to say, "This is our country, this is who we are, and what we as a people believe. These are our sovereign borders, and we intend to maintain and defend them." Every country has the right to protect its borders as a way of protecting its identity. If it doesn't, it ceases to be its own country. This nation especially has an interest in maintaining its sovereign borders. The United States is a special place. Millions want to come here for exactly that reason, because it's a special place. Americans want it to remain a beacon of freedom and opportunity for immigrants, and our rules should reflect that. But because so many want to come here, we need sensible limits, serious rules, and real borders. Why don't we secure the border with Mexico? We can if we choose to. It won't be easy or cheap, and we can't stop every single illegal entry. But the country certainly has the ability to have a much safer, more secure border. You'll never be able to get control over such a long border, some argue. They forgot that after the terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001, the United States cut off virtually all illegal traffic for several weeks as a security measure. If we did it once, we can do it again. Securing the border wouldn't mean a 2,000-mile-long fence. It would mean a combination of physical barriers, virtual fences made of cameras and sensors, and border patrols. Much of that system is already in place. Securing the border would also mean a good e-verify system and strict enforcement to make sure employers aren't hiring illegal immigrants. Many illegal immigrants are here for work. If they know they can't get a job in the United States after jumping the border, they're much less likely to try. Why hasn't the border been secured? Two groups have stood in the way. Some business interests that want a steady flow of cheap labor, and politicians in both parties, but mainly Democrats, who want to curry the favor of the Hispanic community in hopes of building a permanent political majority. Some immigration reformers support the idea of a guest worker program that allows foreign workers to enter the United States for a set period of time for jobs that need filling and then return to their home countries once their contracts have expired. A program like that may well be part of a long-term solution. But securing the border is the first and essential step to any immigration reform. Until we have a border system that stops the lawlessness, requires people to enter the country in an